What goes up must come down. So the old Isaac Newton classic saying, these briquettes and tiles had been placed up in the loft area, and now they were coming down to be stacked in the living area until I'm ready to lay them in the kitchen for the kitchen floor. So tedious is one word for this. There's no other way of doing it really. It's only you doing it, so you just take as many as you can take at a time, 12, 14, up the stairs, down the stairs. It's a good test anyway for the stairs, having that pressure put on it, the weight of me, which is considerable, and then the weight of the briquettes and the tiles as well. So this is a way that I could then calculate once the tiles are down and the briquettes are down, just how many I've got. And with that, then we can calculate more accurately sort of the weight and the area that I'll be able to reuse somewhere in the house. And this is all in preparation for doing the new timber floor in the bedrooms. So they needed to come away. I don't know why there was only briquettes and stuff in one side of the loft, not on the other. Maybe there was, and they were lifted at some stage, maybe because of the fire back in the day. They'd taken them up, but there's no other places in and around the house where you've got lots of these briquettes, where you'd imagine that if they had been taken out because of the fire, there would be somewhere perhaps, at least some of them stacked up somewhere, but I haven't found any others other than they'd used some for the brick feature, which has been taken out on the kitchen now, and they've been utilised for other bits and pieces as well. Nothing other than that. So I can't remember just how many times I went up and down these stairs on this particular day, lifting briquettes and tiles. But it's a great form of exercise rather than paying for a gym membership, which you never go to. So that's my thoughts on gym memberships. Anyway, you got more and more of these briquettes being brought down. It will be a question of cleaning them up when I've got a spare moment with something like a bolster or a cold chisel, just to scrape off the underside. Thankfully, it's quite a weak mix that they used, so they should clean up relatively easily. And they're quite a nice sort of dusty red colour of red tile. So I think once you've got a sealant on it, it should really shine on the kitchen surface, on the kitchen floor, and make a nice contrast with all the wood that's going to be visible. And then obviously the units, which are going to be essentially old French buffets, which are large pieces of French furniture that are way out of fashion now, and you can pick up for no money at all. I picked up two. One cost €40 and the other cost €50, I believe. So if you imagine how much you're paying for a sort of a flat pack, the base unit from somewhere like IKEA or whatever, and it's just laminated chipboard. So these are solid bits of oak furniture which are going to be used. Reorganise the doors and that, so it make it look a tiny bit more modern than it currently will be. So we got a mix of, and there you go. That's a reason why you shouldn't ever carry more than you're comfortable carrying, because a lot of them went flying, and thankfully there weren't any breakages. Or amazingly, there weren't any breakages. But I thought I'd be clever and put an extra couple of tiles on top, and in fact, I wasn't clever at all. So back to the usual numbers when I'm carrying them. And then it would be a question of, once everything was down, and leaving a few old half bricks and stuff up the top there, because there will be an area that will need to be closed up around about the eaves, which is sort of the beginnings of the roof. There's a slight gap there at the moment, and so I'll probably just bed some in just to close that gap up a little bit. It's not a bad thing to have a bit of an airflow just behind the roof. It's got a breathable membrane anyway, but it's you don't want to hermetically seal it. so it's not necessary for that. Airflow tends to keep things drier than if you seal them off, which can create humidity and stuff. So, like I say, the gap at the moment is probably 5-6 centimeters, a couple of inches. So it just wants closing up down to maybe half a centimeter or so, quarter of an inch, and that'll be sufficient for that. And then obviously where the new walls are being formed, then they will be using insulation. And so even if there is a bit of an airflow at the back of it, it's not going to have an impact on the rooms. The rooms themselves should remain nice and warm, particularly when you think the ceiling for this downstairs area and effectively the floor for the bedrooms is in cob, and it's quite a few inches or centimeters thick. So once you start heating these areas anyway, that will tend to hold the heat, and then so it should, with the insulation as well, it should work twofold. One, you're not going to be burning tons and tons of wood just to try and maintain the heat, the warmth in the house. But it will be sufficient that when you are heating the house, because it's well insulated, it should hold, and hopefully we won't have any problems. I'll be able to have my winters again in shorts and t-shirts, which I used to spend my winters in Normandy, where we had friends that would come over and they would have multiple layers and jackets and everything else, anticipating that they're going to be sitting in a freezing cold house for hours on end. That wasn't the case. It's not my scene. I like to have a bit of comfort in a house. So anyway, getting near to the end of getting all these briquettes and tiles down, stacked fairly as neatly as I can stack them in the living room space, and then you've got, just after a brief sweep up, this is what's left. You can't really tell looking at it level wise, but it does rise ever so slightly from the left hand side to the right hand side, because that's something that'll have to be taken into consideration once I start laying out the batten. And there you can see the composition of the floor, which was, so you have the beams, then you've got the thick batten between each beam, and then you've got the cob, which is adjoined to that and then added to give you X amount of thickness. And then they just put a weak sand and cement mortar on top to bed in the briquettes and the tiles. And that obviously worked well. And you look at the far end there, you can see the eaves, you can see daylight peering out. So it's just a question of closing those gaps up a wee bit. And then we get to the stage where we can have a little bit of a count up. So I've calculated, I've got around about 240 tiles that I've stacked up. And the French call them cans, which is 15 by 15. They're not actually, these are actually 14 by 14, so 14 by 14. And that's about 5 square meters. And then with the briquettes, I've got around about 406 briquettes that I've recuperated, and that's giving me something like 10 square meters in anticipation of laying somewhere. Anyway, it's the end of this video. Thanks ever so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one.